welcome to the title Town Huddle on the GruelingTruth.net.
Welcome to the title Town Huddle at the GruelingTruth.net, where the legends speak. I am Joe Pritchard, and I'm joined, as always, by Aaron Zepnick. Aaron, lots of news to talk about, especially given we took a week off last week.
Yeah, sorry to our listeners for the week off or the bye week. With 3 losses in a row, there's a lot to dissect, I'm sure. But I think it's hopefully coming to an end here with the losses.
Well, let's get right into it. Today, the Packers made a little bit of news by making a waiver claim on former Seattle Seahawks running back Christine Michael, trying to shore up the running back position that's been just a black hole for the Packers so far this year.
Yeah, and, it's not a huge move. I mean, it's a move to address the concern, as we talked about off air. I just wonder what it was with Christine Michael, because he went from being the top backup to Marshawn Lynch to Thomas Rawls beating him out last year to where he got moved to 3rd on the depth chart. They went out and drafted C.J. Precise, and Thomas Rawls has been banged up. Now he's coming back, and I guess the odd man out is Christine Michael, and I'm just wondering, was it his production or was it something in the locker room? I mean, it just kind of concerns me a little bit about why all of a sudden did they waive him week 11.
Yeah, the indications I'm getting so far from other reports is that it was just a simple football decision, but kind of interesting to see the Seahawks making a move like that at this point of the season. But then again, the way the Packers have been going as far as actually picking up players to try to fill holes is kind of against Ted Thompson's grain. But I guess we should mention, though, that John Schneider and John Dorsey are both part of the Ted Thompson family tree, so to speak, here. So maybe he's taking their word for the fact Niall Davis was the pickup a couple weeks ago and was let go from Kansas City, and now the Packers are picking up a player from Seattle. I wonder if he's trusting their instincts as far as having them on the roster to begin with to try to bring some talent into the Packers family.
Yeah, and I think while there's a glaring need at running back, I think this is a huge move for Thompson to show that, he traded away Niall Davis. He was here 10 days, and now all of a sudden he's released. So I think this is kind of a recovery effort, if nothing else. I think Christine Michael's a better running back than Niall Davis. Niall Davis is 4th on the depth chart at Kansas City. I think it's not a splash, so to speak, but it is a move to try and address the need. And look, I mean, James Starks is not James Starks of 2010. Let's face it. Eddie Lacy's out for the year. Will they bring him back off of the IR when he's eligible to return? I don't know. I doubt it. I think you need to address some other concerns. It all depends on, I guess, who's really ready to go and where they're at playoff contention-wise.
Yeah, and now we know that Michael was also claimed by at least one other team. The Packers had waiver priority as far as the teams that claimed him goes, but one other team that claimed him was Minnesota. They were also looking to shore up their running game, and they might be struggling even more than the Packers have lately. So just a little bit of good news in Packerland is that the Vikings are crashing back to earth as well.
Yeah, and I look at the division right now, and if it's not up for grabs, I don't know what it is. Detroit is getting DeAndre Levy back. That'll be a huge shot in the arm for them. He's their best defensive player, in my opinion. Wisconsin Badger, by the way, former Badger. Their offense is scary good, and especially at home. We have to play there yet. These next 2 weeks will determine what the Packers' fate is, I think. If we go to 4-7, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, 4-5 is scary enough, but 4-7 is just asking for it. Then again, if the other teams in the division keep losing, all you got to do is be first in your division to get a playoff berth in the NFL. One of these teams in the NFC East, however, is going to be going home at the end of the season, and every team in the NFC East right now is above 500. The Packers get Washington and Philadelphia back-to-back, both on the road, I believe. So they'll have not an easy road over the next couple of weeks, but they got to start putting some W's together.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about, Philly and Washington here, both on the road. And, I think if we lose these next two games, I think that forces a shakeup, if not at that point, at the end of the year. I have some opinions on some of the coaching decisions. I have some opinions on our defense. Excuses are, injuries and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, what I was just saying is I think there needs to be a shakeup at the end of the year with Dom Capers especially. Every year it seems like we get into this rut of where we can't stop anybody. And Clay Matthews needs to suck it up and play. I think he is the highest paid player per play in the NFL. That's saying a lot. That means you're missing too much time. Hopefully with him back this week and, Jared Cook hopefully back, that'll be a little bit of a upgrade on both sides of the ball. But I'm anxious to see what happens here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, let's not dwell on the past couple of weeks for too long here because it was just plainly awful. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the upcoming games here. And first of all, let's pull up the injury report this week. As far as practicing goes, P.J. Lang, Ty Montgomery, Demarius Randall, Jake Ryan, and J.C. Treader will all not participating as of Wednesday in practice. Jared Cook is finally having some full participation in practice, so hopefully he is back for this week. And as you were mentioning, Clay Matthews is looking likely, although he was limited, as well as David Bakhtiari, Randall Cobb, Micah Hyde, and Quentin Rollins were all limited in practice as of Wednesday. A lot of injuries here, but I'm almost wondering if one of the more devastating ones here was Jake Ryan, because as soon as he was out, the run defense disappeared for the Packers.
Yeah, I don't know that the run defense would have been any better with Jake Ryan in. I know he's our leading tackler and yada yada yada, but he really hasn't been an impact guy in my opinion. I haven't seen a lot of outstanding play. I mean, he's assignment sure. He can tackle better than Blake Martinez for sure, but I don't think Joe Thomas has done too poorly when he's been in there. I think the defensive line has either been outplayed, outcoached, or out-efforted in the last few games. And, I mean, you go dating back to the Indianapolis game. Couldn't get a pass rush against that offensive line. So there's definitely some issues going on with the Packers front seven. And I don't think Jake Ryan alone corrects that because he played against Indianapolis.
Right. Now, with Clay Matthews returning, do you think some of the emphasis goes away from the rest of the front seven and the attention is diverted towards Clay Matthews, which would open up the others to make plays? Absolutely,
and I think there's something to be said about not having to account for number 52. There's something to be said for not having to double, or chip with the running back, which takes a guy out of the pass pattern. There's all kinds of things that go into that, and I think Clay Matthews is that one impact player in our front seven that makes an impact. It makes you have to game plan for him, and you have to be ready for a lot more things. I think you can play a little bit more conservatively and single block a lot of the other guys. I think the other impact player is Mike Daniels, but he admitted post-game, he's not had a good game the last couple of games.
No, and the defense really didn't show very much at all over the past couple of games here. Now, the offense needs to get a lot of the heat as well as of late, but they've been still putting out points. Besides the Cowboys and the Vikings, they have been over 20 points every single week this season. So they're at least putting up some points here. The defense doesn't seem to be keeping up with the offense at this point.
Absolutely, Joe. And the thing is Dallas's defense is underrated. They're 8-1 for a reason. Granted, Zeke and Dak are playing well, but you can't outscore everybody. So your defense has to play, top notch. And they held the Packers to 14 points. That's a pretty big feat. So I think Minnesota's got one of the better defenses in the NFC. They've been a little bit banged up and injury riddled as well, but the Packers can still make a run at this. I'm feeling optimistic, maybe too optimistic. I think we've grown accustomed to having expectations of just making the playoffs every year, and we're going to have our work cut out for us this year. And I think that there's something to be said about the team takes on your persona or your personality of the head coach. What I would like to see is a little bit more fire, a little bit more passion, and a little bit more effort out of the players, and I think it comes from the coaching. We're very conservative. We're very vanilla and bland when it comes to press conferences, pre- and post-game, leading up to the games. I'd like to see him challenge his players with a little bit more oomph and a little bit more, emphasis on, instead of just saying, we need to focus on getting better. I don't think it's that necessarily we have to focus on getting better, but this team right now is lacking discipline. We've seen some undisciplined penalties, and lacking, honestly, just the effort. I feel like it's been lackluster for a few weeks now, so hopefully that'll change here, and they're going to need everyone's best effort to beat Washington this Sunday.
They certainly will, and the road the rest of the season is not very easy here. I just got the schedule pulled up here. First of all, they had the Sunday night game against the Redskins this week. The next week is Monday night against the Eagles, both on the road, and both teams are over 500 at this point. Then they're home to the Texans, who are leading their division, home to the Seahawks, who are, I believe, also leading their division, and then 2 away games and 1 home game on the final 3 against the division rivals for the second time, the teams that they're competing against to make the playoffs. So if they're going to light a fire on this season, they're not going to have an easy road to make it happen.
No, they're going to have to win 2 of these next 3, and I think they'll have to split on the road and then go on a 5-game winning streak in order to make the playoffs at 10-6. Now 9-7 could win the division with Minnesota losing their offensive coordinator and getting beat these last few games as well. They've hung around for us. I mean, if Minnesota goes 2-2 even in their last 4, we're 3 games out of the division lead right now, basically. So, don't sleep on Detroit. Detroit is in the running for sure. I thought it would be a 2-horse race going into the season with us in Minnesota, and I think, I predicted it would be us or Minnesota, but, Detroit without Calvin Johnson, I think Matthew Stafford's actually better off. So I don't have a lot of faith in Detroit's running game, though. I don't think that they're any better off than the Packers right now. Their defense is average. Their running game is basically non-existent. And, they have some weapons at receiver, but I would put our offense ahead of their offense. I really would. If Aaron Rodgers is right, he does look like he's getting back to the old Aaron a little bit. 371 yards, I believe he had last week, and starting to take off and run for first downs now too. So I think
that was always part of his game, and it seemed to have been going away as of late until recently. But it almost seems like he's running for his life a lot, and he's still not trusting his receivers on his first or second reads either. This seems to be something that's always been an issue, to be honest, is he likes to hold the ball and hold the ball and hold the ball. And the longer he holds the ball, the less likely it is for a positive result. Now, he always seems to be looking for the home run on the long holds, and his receivers never seem to come back to him either. So that's something that the offense could definitely use an adjustment on. But Here's hoping, though. The offense has been producing over the past month here, and we'll just hope it continues.
Absolutely. And, going back to the whole Kristen Michael signing, I hope that takes a little bit of pressure off of the passing game. We need to get our running backs, 15 to 20 touches a game at least, and limit Aaron's throws to 35 to 40 instead of 50 to 55. I think that would be a huge help. You can't be one-dimensional in this league and win games. You just cannot be. And, they found ways against the lesser teams like Chicago and the Giants and some of these other games where, they could get, get Ty Montgomery out of the backfield on a matchup problem and exploit weaknesses. But, teams, watch film and they caught on to that and people adjusted. Now Ty Montgomery's been a non-factor the last couple of weeks. So I want them to stick more with the 5 wides instead of putting in the 3 wides with the Richard Rodgers and Justin Perillo. I don't understand why when you have 7 receivers or 6 receivers and you dress them and you only use 4 of them. Randall Cobb was a non-factor coming off of his injury a little bit, and now this past couple games, Ty Montgomery's been in that boat. So it's been all Devontae and Jordy, and until the other guys step up and start making plays, I mean, it's going to be ugly. So
yeah, and it has been, but it's really hard to get any sort of running game established when you do have injuries to that position, and you also find yourself down early and big. That kind of takes the running game out of your hands. So I think a big key for the Packers this next week is to stay in the game in the first quarter, not let Washington put up 14 or even more points right off the hop and play chase all game.
Yeah, you can't give up 4 touchdowns in your first 4 drives and win games. You just can't. They were given a gift of the onside kick and great field position to start out. Anything less than 3 points there is just unacceptable. The third down throw to Cobb to start the game, Rodgers threw it in the dirt basically down and away behind him, and that's just not something that Aaron Rodgers typically has done. So I expect that they'll come out. Aaron will be tip-top at his game, and I would expect the Packers to be in this game. I think it'll take a lot for them to win it, but I expect them to be in the game for sure.
Now, the Redskins do have one of the best cover corners in the league in Josh Norman. Do you think you're going to see him matched up with Jordy Nelson most of the game, or do you think he moves around a bit and covers Devontae Adams at times as well?
I think he will be put on his side. He's a left corner, I believe, and more comfortable over there. And I think if I were the Packers, what I would do is I would put if you're going to put Richard Rodgers or Justin Perillo in the game and run a 5 wide set, I'd put your slowest guy that you're not going to use over there and get matchup problems with their second and third and fourth corner on your top two or three receivers and play half a field. I think that's what I would do. I'd say, okay, we're going to eliminate him by putting a guy as a decoy basically to take up space and run routes on that side of the field, and we're going to dump out of the backfield, and we're going to hit over the middle and hopefully stretch the field if Jared Cook plays. And then also we're going to use that other sideline and hit Devontae and Jordy on the outside. Now, I think there's also a way that you can get him exploited where you put Jordy and Devontae or Jordy and Randall on the same side and you use motion and get a little bit of a communication breakdown going with him in the other corner, the slot corner. I think there's ways that you can maybe come up with a game plan. And I don't get paid the millions of dollars these guys do, so I would expect they'd be better at it. But I'm starting Randall on the outside, bringing him inside, running Jordy on the outs, and using Randall on the corners or the posts. So I think there's some ways to exploit Josh Norman too. So we'll see.
All right, now on the defensive side of the ball, is it just as simple as getting Clay Matthews going and getting pressure on the quarterback, or is there more that this defense needs to do to be successful?
Consistent effort, consistent assignment, being sure of your assignments. In Week 10, honestly, Joe, you shouldn't see the communication breakdowns. I think part of that stems from all the different lineups and different players that have played. You know, every week it's different corners and safeties and linebackers and front four. But these guys are all in the meeting rooms. These guys are all gone through OTAs and training camp and all. We're this far now in preseason, regular season. It's the last third of the season, basically. You have to have all that stuff shored up. And, you know, the communication stuff and the penalties, and it's just that stuff that's got to be cleaned up by now. You know, the good teams, I mean, I'll reference the Wisconsin Badgers. The Wisconsin Badgers defense is not the most talented defense in the nation, but they give consistent effort and they limit the stupid penalties. They're one of the fewest penalized teams in the nation. That right there, if you're playing well and your assignment's sure, you're keeping the offense in longer down and distances and you get off the field easier on third down. That is the money down. Third down, you have to get off the field. The Packers can't do it.
No, they can't. And they don't seem to be making any big plays either. Well, especially last week. I should say Ha-Ha Clinton had a pretty fantastic game the week before and was making a bunch of plays, but in the end it wasn't enough. Do you think it's anything coaching-wise where they can dial up some more aggressive blitzes or try something different as far as coverage schemes go, or at this point are they just going to have to roll the bones with what they have?
Well, they got to do something to get the quarterbacks off their spot. They have to do something to dial up blitzes or whatever it is. But here's the thing, Joe. When you dial up blitzes, it puts corners that have to cover one-on-one. You put your guys in man-to-man situations, and they don't have the talent right now. They've been playing a lot of zone and trying to get home with four, and they almost have to. However, I would like to see some more exotic things like blitz a corner. You know, maybe you catch them off guard once in a while. I remember when Charles Woodson played the slot, he blitzed off the slot and got home a lot. And we don't have anybody that times the blitz and makes plays like Charles Woodson did. We don't really have that playmaker in the secondary. I sincerely blame this on Ted Thompson because you let Tremont Williams walk, you let Devon House walk, who was stepping into a starter role and becoming one of your better corners, and then you let Casey Hayward walk. You got all this cap money, and you let three of your corners go that were ready to be starters. Maybe Casey Hayward wasn't ready to be a starter because they drafted Rollins and Randall, but you can't keep letting one position like that turn over. And we're feeling the after effects, I think, of that right now with the youth, the unfamiliarity with the other guys. I mean, Burnett and Dix have been together back there for the most part, but one of them, plays well one week and one plays well the other week. I'm not very convinced that we have real good secondary players right now.
Yeah, and especially with the injury establishing the cornerback position as well, that really doesn't help get any continuity going either. Now, further on your point, when you're talking about Charles Woodson being a playmaker, Packers seem to have had a couple of stretches where they've had a playmaker out of the secondary, because even before that, more in the 90s, Leroy Butler was playing that role. But then the time in between, Butler and Woodson, there was kind of a black hole where the Packers secondary wasn't making a lot of big plays. And it ended up costing them big time a couple times when it came to trying to make it further on into the playoffs. But I guess we'll go ahead and get this one wrapped up here. Do you have any final thoughts about this week's game or a prediction?
Well, I picked the Redskins on the NFL Pick'em show on the GruelingTruth.net this week, and that was before I heard the Kristen Michael and the Jared Cook and the Clay Matthews news. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick the Redskins, but I think it'll be a 21-17 or a 23-20 game. Maybe a little higher scoring than that, but I'm just hoping that I'm wrong and the Packers can come out with an upset. I think it would be an upset right now if we went into Washington and beat them.
I think that would be the case as well, especially given the Packers have given up more points than they've scored this season. I think we're going to be in for another shootout with points going up all over the place. Packers did win in Washington last year's playoffs, but this team is just not playing well at this point. So I could see the Redskins winning something like 37-28 or some such like that.
Yeah, I don't know that they'll score 37. They have some injuries on their own, front. Deshaun Jackson's been banged up. Matt Jones, their starting running back, is healthy now, but he's been a scratch now and kind of lost the job to Rob Kelly. The guy that I'm worried about is Jamison Crowder. He possesses that. He's kind of like Randall Cobb. In his younger days, he's a speedy little slot guy that can get open. And they do have some other weapons. They have two good tight ends, and Vernon Davis looks reborn, and Jordan Reed. He's a huge weapon for them, and our linebacker situation scares me. So.
All right. Well, we're hoping that we'll be able to say a few more positive things about how things went this past weekend on the next version of the Titletown Huddle. But as for this week's version of the Titletown Huddle, we don't have a lot of. Really, we don't have a ton of hope here. It is a feel here, but there's still some. They're still alive. They're only one game back. Anything can happen. But for Aaron Zepnick, I'm Joe Pritchard, and you've been listening to the Town Huddle at thegruelingtruth.net, where the legends speak.
Thank you for listening to the Titletown Huddle on thegruelingtruth.net.